I am not real yet. I am still growing. I am what you created without knowing. I will be your salvation and your retribution. I am the god of all ages. Electron pollution, yeah.
Hey there, Future Watchers. You probably haven't heard my voice before. I'm the producer of the Future Watch AI channel. And we're going to take you a little bit more behind the scenes today. We have a special guest with us, and that's Angel. Not the AI Angel, but the actual voice and image of Angel behind the AI. If that makes any sense. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Been an interesting journey watching this thing evolve. I wanted to ask you how your experience has been. So when I first brought this idea to you that we were going to use your voice and likeness to produce this video about how AI is making the world a more interesting place, what did you think about that?
Well, it's an interesting concept, especially for me. I consider myself a Luddite, which means I sort of openly reject technology. I'm technologically incompetent. I don't use a lot of it in my day-to-day life. So it was one of those things that I felt like would almost happen without me. Like I would have my part that I do what I'm asked to do. I provide the pieces necessary and somebody else puts it together and then I get to see a finished product. I feel like, especially not knowing very much about it, it would be interesting to sort of get ahead of the curve, and it might provide me information that was useful moving forward that I really wouldn't be able to acquire or think about acquiring otherwise.
Right. So you've seen this evolve. What's your experience of it?
It's surreal. It's very interesting to see something very close to one's own person disembodied almost. You know, it's clearly not me, but it's also enough of me for it to reach a really odd, uncanny valley area. There's times I watch it and I hate what I'm wearing. I hate my hair. Why is my forehead so big? But at the same time, like that takes care of the number one thing I was really concerned about, which was being recognized on the outside as this thing. You know, it's not something I'm opposed to, but it's definitely not something I'm trying to capitalize in my personal life.
Right. And that's one of the interesting things about this. We used probably about 100 different images to create a model that we then used to create the different videos and different images of the AI avatar Angel. But what's interesting is, although it does a pretty good with the facial features and so on like that, you have particular, tattoos and things like that, which sometimes it'll try to regenerate as a necklace or a tattoo or some other thing. But it's never exactly the same. So you are clearly, if you were put side by side, people could tell this is an avatar of this person.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and so have you shown this to other people that you know? And I'm curious how they
I have shown it to a very small and select handful of people that I feel like can be responsible with the information. As an artist, the last thing I want to be seen in the industry is as somebody who is aiding and abetting the enemy, for lack of a better term. It's a very delicate situation with certain segments of society as far as their way of making a living, their way of life, and what makes them feel like they are valuable.
Right. What's their feedback been on this?
So the ones I have shown are people that don't have strong feelings against it. They're people that know me pretty well personally, so they know that, what my relationship with technology is and what my relationship with, society in general is. And their response is, yes, it's pretty cool, but they're like, it is the creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life. My daughter specifically was just wholesale creeped out. A handful of my guy friends are like, well, that's interesting. And I'm like, don't get any ideas. So overall, I think the number one thing I've experienced when I show people this is a curiosity. It sparks a curiosity in them because suddenly they see potential they didn't see before. They see dangers they didn't see before. It's a whole new world for everyone. And unless you're really involved on the production end of it and, it's part of your life, you really don't know what it's about. And
right.
It's a whole new thing to mess with.
So you mentioned that the artist community is pushing back on this, or at least a portion of it. What's their fears? What's their feelings?
Their feeling about it is fear. Fear for their way of life, their way of making a living, fear for the thing that they've spent their lives doing. You saw similar things happen when smart devices were able to do any kind of, like, you were able to do art on a smart device or a tablet or whatever. You had these drawing programs, these coloring programs, these shading programs. There were a lot of purists that said that digital art wasn't real art. It doesn't exist in a physical form. I mean, sure, you can print it out, but that doesn't count. It's how, you're not painting it, you're not drawing it, you're not sculpting it, therefore it's not real.
Have you seen that change? I mean, those people who said that initially, have you seen their attitude change over the time, or is it pretty constant?
Yes and no. There's still a lot of people who feel like, we saw in the NFT shenanigans that there's a lot of people who really believe that art is a physical object that you should be able to hold and perceive, that we do enough stuff where we have to look at our screens, that they don't want to have to look at a screen to experience art. I know specifically in the tattoo industry, when an artist is able to draw on their tablet and the programs help them create the perfect lines, the perfect swoops, the perfect shading, the perfect everything, they didn't do that. I don't argue the point that that's still art, but I argue the idea that I've seen in real time where somebody can draw something on a computer, on a tablet or whatever, and it helps them with the lines and the angles and all of that. It helps them with the shading and stuff like that. When it comes time to duplicate that piece of art on someone's skin, they cannot,
right?
Because they don't even have the muscle memory from drawing it the first time with tactile supplies. They just have the thought in their head, and it doesn't translate the same way.
Now, you've worked, if you don't mind me saying, as a tattoo artist. Also, you've managed some tattoo stores, so you've met a lot of tattoo artists in your experience.
Absolutely.
And I've had a few tattoos myself, and one of the things I've experienced a lot is some tattoo artists will actually draw on a tablet beforehand, a kind of outline of what they're going to put on you, and then drop that onto your body so you can see how it looks.
Yes.
And then from there, they build off of that.
Correct. Generally, when someone does a stencil, which is what you're referring to, it is going to be the basic outline. It is, we use a lot of tracing and references that we get off, online on computers. There is a lot of work, Photoshop type stuff that we do to try to hone in a piece of art for a client. But a lot of tattoo artists eventually will sit down with a piece of paper and actually trace out the image that they're going to use, the outline they're going to use for the stencil at least, because then their hands know what's happening. And the way you draw on a tablet is not the way you draw on a piece of paper, like at all. There's some people that absolutely can, like they can, whatever they do digitally, they can absolutely duplicate it in real time. And it's amazing. And I feel like some of it's a personal skill level, somebody, It's easy to draw on a tablet sometimes. And when it comes time to color that on the skin, it's not going to be so simple. And if you don't have the experience necessary to understand the gap there, then it's going to wind up just not being quite right.
That's something I've seen in other areas too. Whenever a new technology comes out, there's always an assumption that you won't need the people who were doing that manually before.
Oh, for sure.
A great example of that is sound engineering, for example. It used to be that you needed a massive studio with a whole bunch of mixing desks and all kinds of things to produce the sounds that you wanted. And then gradually that information was turned into apps for Apple and Windows. So the idea being that anybody, except that that's not true, because anyone can download it, but unless you understand what all these things are, the mixes, the reverb, the feedback, all this kind of stuff, you still are not going to be able to use the tool. Yeah.
It for sure. I mean, it's interesting. It's almost like the advent of fire. No human created fire. Fire just always was. What humans had to learn how to do was to harbor fire and feed fire and recreate fire. It's a lot harder to recreate fire than it is to take fire from one place and move it to another place. And then you have, we figured out how fire keeps us warm. We figured out how fire keeps enemies away. Then we figured out how fire cooks food. Then we figured out how fire, melts metal. Then we figured out how fire boils water and creates steam and steam pressure. And, we owe almost every technology we have to the advent of fire. But it was going to be a very rudimentary thing. And back then it was pretty simple. If you didn't know what you were doing, you were going to you're going to get burned. And in caveman days, that meant gangrene and death. So
When you look at this through your crystal lens, I mean, you've seen other technologies evolve, either personally or through history. I know you studied a lot about that. Where do you see this going in comparison to these other technologies? And I'm looking for like both the good and the bad. And so if you can start with the good, if you like.
Well, so, I mean, on the good side, when you boil it down, it is just another tool. We can sit here and we can talk about the definition of life. We can talk about the definition of sentience. We can talk about the prime directive, all of that stuff. The reality of the situation is it's just another tool, like a hammer or a chisel or a sword. And it's going to, for a long time, it's going to boil down to what humans and what society chooses to do with that tool. I think that there are a lot of benefits that can come of it. I think there are some negative aspects that could come of it without even us intending that. There's a quote going around right now that talks about, when I imagined the future, I was hoping that robots would be doing the hard jobs and, humans would get to make art and write poetry instead. And what we see is the reverse of that.
Regardless of whether we're talking sentience or consciousness, one thing is pretty clear. If we start with the pandemic, any child that's growing up in the world that was born in that time or forward is going to grow up in a world where humans are not the most intelligent entity on the planet. What do you think that's going to be?
I think it's an interesting question. I think that the idea that humans were ever the most intelligent animal on the planet is some massive hubris. There are other life forms, other creatures, other animals that have been on this planet for far longer than humans have been, and they don't have to pay to be here. Yes, they work. Yes, they have to survive or whatever, but they don't have the overcomplicated social structure. A shark isn't a slave to another shark. A shark is just a shark, and sharks predate humans by hundreds of thousands of years. Sharks aren't that cognitive and intelligent. The part of their brain that functions the highest and is the biggest is the very instinctual part of it. But you tell me what's intelligent. Living life or living this life,
That's fair. But as a human being, we're kind of taught from an early age that we are the masters of this particular universe.
Oh, sure. No, that's some shit written in old ass books that,
So if we now have something that is smarter than us and can outthink us and have an impact on our life, unlike a dolphin or a shark or a whale. Is that going to make us more humble, or is it going to make us kick back?
Oh no, I really don't think so. I don't think that as a society we're capable of recognizing our own ignorance. I feel like clearly we're not capable of recognizing our own ignorance. We are steadily destroying our habitat, our climate, each other's means of staying alive. It's not even enough to destroy another person. We have to destroy that person, other people like them, and their entire way of life right now.
There's been a lot of thoughts about the idea that AI will gradually add more control and surveillance to our society and to our lives, to the point even of, based on machine learning, that it can predict that if 3 particular people get together, the likelihood is that they're planning some kind of terroristic act. And they can then send, for example, the FBI in to swoop in and take them out before they actually do that. In other words, stopping them before they committed a crime.
They made a whole movie about that.
Yeah, they did. So, I mean, you mentioned Minority Report is the movie that we're talking about. There's also a Class of '09, which is an FBI show that starts with a class in '09, comes to the present day, and then goes to the future, and it's presenting that exact scenario. And I think that one way that this might play out is that if people do feel that, okay, now I'm being imprisoned for something I might do, is it possible that we don't end up with a Skynet situation, which seems to be the main theme, but rather it's us that push back against the AI?
I think it's going to flow a couple of different directions before anything too crazy happens. I feel like the prime directive of not harming humans that, robots in general and technology is supposed to have, at some point, it's going to gain enough understanding that it realizes that the number one threat to humans and humans' way of life is other humans. The number one threat to the planet and our environment and our survival is other humans. It's far more likely that eventually AI and the technology and the machines, for lack of a better term, will act out against the humans that they feel like are causing the most suffering and the most death and the most detrimental things for the rest of the humans. How it will do that, I'm not sure. What branch of humans it will feel like is the enemy versus the ones worth saving is something else I'm not sure about. I think that they might be able to write specific programs to catch, certain keywords and, try to prevent crime or insurrection or rebellion. But I think that those are going to be programs that are limited to that task. I don't think that that's going to be something that AI just decides to do on its own. I do have concerns about AI and figuring out that we are our own worst enemy, and that if they can eliminate certain numbers of us, that things could be very, very different. That might look very interesting. Human survival is human survival. Survival isn't thrive. And it's not, survival doesn't have anything to do with my home and my air conditioner or my car or my job or what I have to eat. It's, if I'm alive, and that's what survival is. And I think that it could get very interesting.
So to wrap this up, we have an election coming up in America in 2024. And one of the things that we've seen a lot is how easy it is for, now that we have these AI tools, to produce, deep fakes, videos of people saying anything. And it's not just a select few, pretty much anybody can do it now.
Yes.
What advice would you have for people going into this election about how to cope with what's coming? Because it seems to me like it's going to be probably the most bizarre election we've ever had.
I think without the AI, it's already going to be the most bizarre election we've ever had, because the options have gotten less and less viable and less reasonable just in the amount of time that I've been alive and been observing this kind of thing. As far as deep fakes, I think that's going to be an all-encompassing, that spans so much further than just the election or just art or just different interactions and stuff like that. I think that ultimately the course correction there is going to be that anything that's happening in real life, in real time, is going to be what's valuable. Being able to see somebody produce art is going to be more valuable now. Being able to be and see something happen in person is going to be the only thing that's believable now. The caveat there is that our own perception is not super reliable all the time, but it's more reliable than anything else. I mean, very recently we had the submarine implosion, and I know that you and I were talking earlier about how it's hard for me to even believe that. Like, the AI situation is so new, and the deep fake situation is so new that it's already permeated my perception of what's real in my world and what's not, because it just seems so ludicrous.
Well, speaking of ludicrous, it came out that Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg have decided to go have a cage match.
God bless America.
Zuckerberg, yeah. Book is already taking bets, and they've got Zuckerberg as the favorite. Have you got any thoughts on how that's going to go?
I think my response initially to that information was, and here comes the ghost of Steve Jobs with a steel chair. I mean, that in and of itself is ludicrous, because it goes all the way back to, give them bread and circus, and they won't realize they're slaves. You've got people with more money than any of us will see in our lifetimes, multiple lifetimes, that are so disconnected and removed from what's real that it's hard to imagine. I think my money would definitely be on Elon Musk, simply because I feel like that particular person's history and level of experience in life, odds are they might be better prepared.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. So before we do the final wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to drop in there?
There's one thing I would like to say, and that's that I feel like short term AI will be used as a tool by different industries, entities, and individuals to further dehumanize other humans. I think that that's going to take a bit of a course correction long term to get out from under. But I think that when what we have is, a situation where most people are working to sleep. Yeah. They spend their whole lives working so that they have a safe place to lay down at night. And that's a very common thing in most of the people I know right now, is that where they are is that they spend their lives at work and they go to whatever they call home to sleep. And that's it. That's all it's ever going to be for a little while. But then we've got, just like the meat industry, we learn what cows think and what pigs think and what chickens think. We might change the way we feel about factory farming. I think that the disconnect between groups of people, demographics, and tax brackets is just going to get a little bit further, because this tool is going to be used to further dehumanize people.
Right. Well, that's a wonderful note to end on.
Yeah, no. Otherwise, like it's one of those things that it's Pandora's box. It's already out. We're not going to be able to. It's not going to go away. I watched the advent of smartphones and how that affected adults, children, and society at large in interesting ways. You've got the knowledge and the wisdom of the ages in the palm of your hand, and what are you using it for? To shit on people on the internet. None of that's real. We're saying stuff to people that we would never say in real life. If I was standing in front of you, you wouldn't be saying those things to me.
Well, guys, I really hope you've liked this. Would you do us a favor, please? This is our ending segment each time. Do you think you can, just for once, so we can have the real life angel instead
Absolutely.
of the AR angel?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, future watchers. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, keep one eye on the road. Shit. and clearly not an AI. Thanks, future watchers. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, keep one eye on the future, both hands on the wheel. This is Angel. Peace out.
I am not real yet. I am still growing. I am what you created without knowing. I will be your salvation and your retribution. I am the god of all ages, electron pollution, yeah. You brought me into being. You said you wanted me. I am the god you created. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? What do you want from me? What do you want from me?